Hey, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This is the show all about farmers markets, how to increase your market business success, and in the current climate, how to maximize safety while providing people with fresh food. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a farmer or food producer selling at farmers markets, this is the podcast for you. As COVID-19 has shaken up not just farmers markets, but the whole economy, many people are considering taking the leap and following their entrepreneurial dreams. Small businesses are sometimes more nimble and easier to modify when conditions change, and we've all had a chance to contemplate how we want to spend our workdays. So this week on Tent Talk, we're replaying our inspirational 2019 interview with Eric Dobbs of 7 Seas Roasting Company. Eric's passion for coffee led him from the military and law school to our Vendor 101 workshop and the farmers market, where he launched his coffee roasting business. A few years later, 7 Seas is still in farmers markets, even now that they have 2 successful brick-and-mortar coffee shops.
Today we have Eric Dobbs of 7 Seas Roasting Company, the first American coffee company to import specialty coffee beans from Laos, and a vendor at San Diego farmers markets since 2017. Coming from a military and legal background, Eric joined with fellow veteran Rob Hempstead to start 7 Seas, a company as dedicated to its Southeast Asian farmer suppliers as to great coffee. They recently opened their first brick-and-mortar coffee house, so we'll talk about how they manage both a retail operation and farmers markets simultaneously. It's a bit of a trick. Eric, you're in the Navy and then law school and then coffee. So related. How did that transition happen?
So I first discovered coffee. I was a late bloomer when it came to coffee because I used to drink. I was a tea drinker growing up, and then I was working night shifts in Afghanistan. So I definitely was looking for something with a little higher octane than the tea that I was used to drinking. So there were different coffee shops on base in Afghanistan. So then I discovered one of those and started drinking espresso, and then kind of grew from there. That's what got me hooked originally. And then when I came back to San Diego, I eventually got out of the Navy and I was in law school at Cal Western, and I was drinking a little bit higher grade of coffee in terms I was over at James, I was at Bird Rock,
nice.
Dark Horse.
Yeah.
So that's why we just really discovered, hey, the flavors that are within coffee, that definitely piqued my interest. But I think the long hours in the library, things like that, I started looking at the bottom of the coffee cup and like, how do I get out of here? So,
Right.
So that's kind of, and that's really no joke. Really, kind of the inspiration for it did develop in the libraries of Cal Western, and then as I started to pursue it, I came to a juncture where I was either going to have to choose one or the other. I recognized that I could no longer do both. I could no longer stay in law school and pursue coffee at the same time. So I talked to the law school. They made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and that was I explained to them, hey, I've got an opportunity to start this business. And they said, hey, we'll meet you halfway. We'll hold your seat and your scholarship for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So that gave me the opportunity to step back and say, okay, well, if things...
5 years?
That really gave me the
nice.
opportunity to say, okay, if things don't work out, because there always has to be a plan B. Things don't always go according to plan. At least at that point, if things didn't work out, I could jump back into law school. Or if things did work out really well, I could jump back into law school. So
Right.
either way, still, at least it was an option for me. So
How long ago was that?
That was in 2017 is when I made this.
So you still got a few years to decide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good.
That's nice.
But so far, I mean, and we'll get into that too, is that, to be honest with you, I'm just at that juncture now where we're 3 years, 2.5, 3 years to where my classmates are starting to graduate from law school. And as I look back, I mean, the journey has been so rewarding that all of the kind of the social aspects that had driven me into law school have really, those boxes have been checked over and over and over again with what we do with the coffee. So really, I mean, at this point, I haven't resubmitted my application to law school. I mean, it really has been a very, very rewarding journey, because something that we do one of the things that we do that's very unique is our engagement with the communities both in San Diego and then back with the coffee farmers in Laos, in Vietnam, and in Peru. So
Yeah. You do a lot with your farmers.
Yes.
So there is some service element to the way you do coffee.
Oh,
right?
that's really one of the things. I think that's, in terms of like what differentiates us, that's definitely one of them. Because a lot of people, when we tell our story, they say, why doesn't everybody just do that? Well, number one, it's a lot of work. Yeah. Well, it is a lot of work. So, I mean, we don't need to do, it's really us going above and beyond to get on a plane and go to these countries and really engage with the farmers and take that on, that social responsibility to say, hey, I want to make sure that we're paying them a fair market value for what they're doing. And a couple of our charity roasts have kind of developed from those relationships as well. So the short answer is why everyone doesn't do that is because if you ask the accountant, like, why doesn't everybody do that? The numbers, it does not add up in terms of, we could go straight to a bean broker and just get it straight from there and be done and sell the coffee. But the road, that's just the beginning of the road for us, really, just the at the farm level. So on both sides of the chain, in terms of at the farm level, we're engaged, and then in San Diego we do quite a bit as well, as far as just staying engaged with the community. We have a couple of charity roasts that we do with the military specifically. So that's kind of how this is all kind of I didn't intend to be as much of the story as it's kind of grown into. I was initially a little shy about, in terms of like, hey, I don't want people to buy the coffee just because I was in the Navy, or I really wanted the coffee to speak for itself. But as Seven Seas has kind of just evolved, a lot of those old connections have just kind of come, just you tap into the network, and then that's just kind of what how it's kind of grown into its own.
Well, and it's great coffee, but we teach farmers market vendors and how to make their businesses better. And one of the things is differentiation. So there's a lot of good bread out there. Yes. But if you've got good bread and you've also got a story, that's why people are going to buy from you. So I think you've got great coffee, but there's a lot of great coffee roasters in San Diego. So the fact that you also have a story, that you're engaging with the public, that you've got the charity element, I mean, that's, all things being equal, somebody's going to tip that way because they can also feel good about making that purchase.
Right, and that's where I really bring it into the farmers market as well, because a lot of people, you'll see they'll eventually grow out of the market. I'm here to tell you that we'll always be in the farmers market. Always.
And we have that on. Yeah. It's recorded.
Yeah.
And a national audience is witnessing this.
It's a contract.
Yeah, no,
really.
you definitely because you can definitely quote that, because for us. Not only do we start there, so for us, it's kind of the role of the farmers market will even evolve and change as well, because where initially it gave us, we drew a lot of feedback and a lot of growth came out of those farmers market in a business sense, because what Seven Seas was in 2017 at our first farmers market is, I won't say radically different, we still sell coffee, but the thing, just kind of how our approach to it has evolved because of the feedback that we get in those markets. And then with a commodity like coffee, as we all know, that there's no shortage of coffee in the market. So the story helps, the quality helps, but then at the end of the day, it's location. So for us, the presence that we have in San Diego, I mean, within a year, people were comparing us to Bird Rock and James and things like that, because of the presence that we have, because people see, wow, you guys are everywhere. You guys are in Little Italy, you're in Pacific Beach, and all that time we were building out in South Park. So so that was really, it gave us a nice springboard to really jump into the community.
Yeah. So how many markets are you participating in now?
We do 4 every week.
You do 4.
Yeah, so we do every San Diego market. So that's Pacific Beach, that's Little Italy on Wednesdays, and then Little Italy again on Saturdays, and then we do La Jolla on Sundays.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's good. It's kind of extended.
So and that's when Bump pulled out of the market, we took their spot in Little Italy. Yeah,
I actually had
good timing.
Well, it was good timing, because I had just gone back just to verify the year that you started in markets, and I went back to the original application that we got at San Diego Markets from you. I was seeing some kind of snippy emails. My staff does accuse me of being a little bit salty, where I'm saying
a little bit.
I've told you before, Eric, we don't have room for coffee at the Lily Saturday Market.
Never be a spot for coffee.
There will never be a spot for coffee at the Saturday Market. We're completely saturated.
Well, that's one of the things I really do. Coming from the military background, I do appreciate that when you're dealing with so many people, you cannot make an exception for every. So I really do respect that. I really do.
Thank you.
And then one pulled out, so
you never know.
No. The thing is so when somebody says no, you just have to keep asking again.
Sure.
A little persistence is helpful.
So it was challenge accepted, but. But and another thing I do share with vendors as they come into the San Diego markets is that San Diego markets is we do have the experience to draw from, in terms of we've been in other markets that are. I guess a little less organized and a little less thought has put into each of the vendors that are plugged in there. So as new vendors come in, we'll share information with them. And one of the things that we always appreciate is that once we know that, hey, once you do have a coffee vendor in there, the box is checked, because I was on the receiving end of that for 6 months, 9 months, where Kat was saying, we do not have any room.
Yeah.
Because
it may not be just one. We don't tend to do exclusivity because we think shoppers want a choice, but we also are really clear on the saturation point at each market based on the size of the market. So, Little Italy does have several coffee vendors, but we also have neighbors that sell coffee, Lofty and Papaleco and Cafe Italia. So we have to look at a saturation point. You want shoppers to have choice, but you don't want so many in one category that nobody makes money.
Right.
So it's
that's something we kind of teach
balance.
to managers too. At the conference, we did a manager round table session, and they were like, how do you decide who to put in? Like, if my market is failing, I just want to accept everybody that applies to me. And I was trying to tell them, like, you can't do that, because if you accept 5 coffee vendors into a market that has 40 vendors, like, they're not going to, none of them are going to do well. All 5 are not going to have enough sales to sustain participation in your market, so they'll all be gone anyways. So you might as well just be selective and be conscious about who you're accepting and make that balance happen. So
curating is really the genius there.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it's good to hear that when vendors recognize that too, because sometimes vendors are like, "What's the problem? There's so many people there. Why can't I just come in?"
I make the best brownie.
Yeah.
I know you have a bunch of brownies, but I make the best brownie. Let me kick out the guy that's been with me for 7 years, because your brownie's the best.
Well, and in all fairness, San Diego Markets does have one of, is it not the largest in San Diego in terms of Little Italy?
Well, it's either the largest or it's the second largest. Depends on if you're talking to me or that liar Dave Larson that runs Hillcrest. And we're just kidding. We love Dave. But we're pretty neck and neck. We're definitely geographically the largest. Our site is much larger than Hillcrest. But we run sort of neck and neck on number of vendors. I think we may be a little bit higher right now. He may be a little bit higher. He picked up a little bit extra real estate, I think, last year. So, but definitely largest or top 2.
Right. Well, someone
big.
that everyone wants to get into the. With that being said, everyone wants the Little Italy market. So having been that vendor, saying, "No, you don't understand. But I've got the best coffee." So our first market really was Pacific Beach, and that was from a business perspective, we had gone through the rite of passage, going through the health department of the city, and even that is a process in and of itself. So all of the excitement of that. Then we got into the Pacific Beach market, and that was a good way for us to really test the market in every sense of the word. So it gave us a good 6 months to really streamline things before we jumped into the Little Italy market, because I know that everyone thinks, hey, that's where I need to be. Kat, you don't understand. It's
I'm the best.
But if you're a brand new vendor, you're not going to be the best vendor at a big market like that. You're just not. It's really overwhelming. It's hard for new vendors to come into a market of that size. So that's exactly what we recommend, is that, like, start at a weekday market or a newer market and get your footing, get your grounding, get your following there. You'll feel really comfortable there once you get adjusted, and then you can kind of step up into bigger markets down the line.
Or you're risking more inventory, and you're having to deal with a lot more people, and you may have to add staff because of the level of number of customers.
And that's where we did we did grow quite a bit. I can tell you that the markets they can be you can come in and it can be quite humbling. I can tell you, our very first market that we did, we had all of the excitement of, we finally got it. Hey, San Diego can finally experience the best coffee, and our very first market, we showed up, we set up, and then we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and we literally did not make a single sale.
Oh.
Yeah, true story. So, that's one of those humbling moments where I'm driving down Garnett, and I'm thinking, boy, maybe I should have stayed in law school.
I'm glad they're holding my scholarship.
Yes. So,
but I think that's true for a lot of businesses. Like, we try to teach that too. Like, you have to get your expectations kind of in check. Your product is great and you're at a great market, but you really need to have those kind of realistic expectations where farmers market shoppers need to kind of warm up to you. So you might not make a sale that first day. That's kind of extreme.
Oh no, that's
extreme to nice.
But that's how we evolved, though, because initially we came in, we were just selling our roasted coffee, and then we started to sample a little bit. Then that grew into people asking, "Hey, can I have a cup of your coffee?" And then and it really was, like, for example, Little Italy was a significant milestone, because I can remember walking by Bump, for example. I think, wow, if we could ever just get there, then we've made it. Right. So when actually we did make that, I can remember, I can remember how far we've come since that first night at Pacific Beach. So, now I really am proud of that position that we do have in Little Italy, because I think that most people do recognize that while coffee is a lot of it does fall into location and proximity in terms of, hey, I'd like a cup of coffee, there's the closest one.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in the markets do recognize what we do in terms of, hey, how in tune we are in terms of why we are at the farmers market, the engagement people that are there, they definitely have a connection with, hey, I want to support the farms. Seven Seas is definitely a company that is engaged with the farmers and supporting them on that level. So it's definitely the venue that we need to be in terms of, like I said, that's why I'm saying we'll always be there.
Yeah.
And now, and as I said, how it shifted is from, we first started our build out in South Park. We received the keys to that location in November of 2017. Now, we didn't open until...
Wow.
Yeah. So that's...
Yikes.
San Diego completely boggles my mind about how long it takes to build a food service operation.
It's
so crazy.
Was it like the permitting or equipment? Or
all of the above.
All
so the thing is, we did... it was a very good learning experience for us because we did take on a location that was an office space to begin with.
Oh, okay.
So we completely transformed it. So that we had to involve every department of the city to make that happen. Plus, we had to have architects and designers. So it really did take...
What led you to choose that location?
Yeah.
Well,
not a food service location.
Well, that was the learning experience. The next one going forward, I don't know that I would have done that. That's the one, if I had to do over again, that would probably. But in terms of the location, it really, really is. I mean, it's worked out. We have phenomenal neighbors with like Left Hand Black. So no, as far as location, it's perfect. And we knew that it was a calculated risk. We knew that it was going to take a little bit longer because we had our sights set on a couple other locations, but we knew once we found that, okay, we'll stop here. And we knew it was going to cost us a little extra, but it was a calculated risk. And it's worked out very, very well. But that's, again, where the farmers markets have played out because as we continued to grow and grow and grow, like I said, that first night we didn't make a single sale. Then we grew and grew. Then we started making our rent, and we were driving our garden high five. Wow, maybe we're onto something. We made $60, and so that's and then it grew to the point where we had such a long build out process that then we got into Little Italy. Then the markets were actually subsidizing the build out. So then it was actually helping to cover the rent over there. So it really was. Without those markets, it would have been a very... if you were to do it the traditional, like American dream, where you just quit your job and say, hey, I'm going to go start a business, you'd go broke. I mean, there's just no way. It's just not sustainable. Nobody envisions... they used to all joke with me, the staff, saying, wow, you sound like a parakeet. I said, why is that? Because every time we ask you, when's it going to open? You say, 2 weeks. and that went on for like months.
Which is always the answer in the restaurant building business.
I asked you 2 months ago and you said 2 months and the person goes, 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 more months.
So that's really, but as I was alluding to earlier, how that's now shifted is now that we have the cafes operational now it takes the pressure off the markets. And we could do just a little bit more PR and just kind of develop those and just tweak those to really fine tune what is it that we want to project to the audience. Because as far as now it's more of a street team than it is like supporting other operations. So it's been very, very good for us in that sense. And then in addition to that, one thing that even during all those times where we're just barely making the rent, just barely getting by. The one thing I would always say is that we always left with something probably of greater value than what was in the cash box. And that was some of the collaborations that we would come up with. And then some of the knowledge that we would take home with us as well. Because every day or every time we're in one of those markets, it's like a trade show. It's like, you can share information. Everybody's got the same goal. Everybody's been down there, or there's people that have been maybe have a year ahead of you of experience, things like that. So from those markets, we developed collaborations with Maya's Cookies. We do a cookie with her now.
Yeah.
We did.
You did like soap.
Yeah, we did the soap.
Yeah.
Oh, with North Park Soap Company.
North Park Soap Company. We've done a collaboration with Edible Alchemy, Smidge Spicery. So there's been several that have just grown out of just proximity. We're neighbors to them. Everybody again likes coffee, so it's like. So those are some of the relationships and some of those collaborations. See, that allowed us by the time we went online, by the time we opened the cafes, like we had this impressive catalog of, oh wow, you've got soap, you've got MCT, CBD oil. How did you guys do all that? Well, the short answer is the farmers markets.
Right.
Yeah.
Just being able to network and pool resources like that. So, if I were
the other thing is, did the following that you developed at the markets help you at the retail store? Because the big thing when you open a brick and mortar is you got to talk people into showing up at that door. Whereas, when you're in the farmer's market, it's the manager's job to make sure people
are recognizable.
Yes,
I think people are like, oh, 7 C's, I know them. So,
yes. And I will definitely say that's one thing, too, that people did watch us grow. And we do have people that reminisce about, wow, I discovered you guys down in North Park. and here you guys are now. So it's helped people, because people appreciate the struggle that you go through, and they do watch you grow, and they become part of the story. So it was actually quite humbling when people would come in and say, oh yeah, I used to get a cardamom coffee from you guys over here. So glad you guys are here now. So it definitely helped with that. So we never had a situation where we finally opened and then it was like, but how are we going to let people know we're here?
Right.
So every week people would say, hey, when are you guys going to open South Park? When are you guys? 2 weeks. So we'd already established a pretty good presence in San Diego thanks to the farmers markets.
Yeah. Do you think you use your farmers market presence now still as selling all your coffee and being there to do sales at the market, but also use it as kind of a marketing for your shop? Like, does your team in the booth say, oh yeah, thanks for buying coffee at the market, you can catch us on, if you're at Saturday, you can say, oh, come by on Monday at our shop in South Park? Because I think I'm always trying to remind vendors who stay in the market after they open a shop, like, make sure to tell your vendors, not like don't come to the market anymore, but hey, like on Monday, if you want coffee, because you'll probably need coffee every day this week, come to the shop, and just really use it as a marketing tool for your new brick and mortar space.
We really do, yes. Yeah. And it is kind of it takes some of the pressure off the markets as well. So if we do sell out of a certain type of coffee or something like that, we can always say, hey, it's available in South Park if you guys just want to run up the street and grab some up there. So it definitely, they definitely complement each other very, very well.
Nice partnership,
Are you roasting at your shop?
Yes.
You are. Did you start out as a cottage food?
We did. Yeah.
So you're doing it at home. I actually have a neighbor that lives right across the street from me that is still a cottage food operation. So and the smell starts, and I'm sure most of the neighborhood thinks, "What's on fire?" And then I've been around coffee roasters enough that I know that it's just Scott across the street roasting coffee in his little side room on his house. But at what point did you decide to move from cottage to a commercial kitchen kind of space? Was it a volume issue? Was it did you hit the sales point that you can't go past?
Well, it's kind of all of the above. Now that was kind of our rite of passage with the health department in terms of, and I definitely respect that. I respected the role that the health department fills for sure. It's just it goes back to the same thing when people tell you, Kat, you don't understand. I've got the best in the business. The health department doesn't always share your sense of urgency or enthusiasm, like, hey, I need to open a new business. But so that took a little while in terms of. So what happened? I was there, and this is where the vendor 101 was very, very helpful.
Oh,
because,
that's right. You were a vendor 101 grad.
So that was because you can Google it, and there aren't any checklists for, hey, what do I need to open a coffee shop? I mean, there may be bits and pieces of information, but not specifically for your needs at the health department in San Diego. So that was the vendor 101 was key. Because initially I had gone up there, the first time I applied for the farmers markets, I had gone up there, explained what we'd like to do to the health department, and then the $1 million question: which forms do we need? Which permits do we need? I'm sorry, sir, we can't tell you that. So I said, okay, is there anybody here? He said, no. So then I said, okay.
There's someone in the back that can help.
So I said, okay, can you just give them all to me? And they said, sir, why would you do that? I said, okay, can you tell me which form that I need? I'm sorry, sir, we can't tell you that. So we ended up with the TFFP, Cottage Food, all of them. So I'm sure we were like licensed to move fuel in San Diego, so just everything. But we did eventually. We had a very small sample roaster that we started with, and that was good for the starting gate, just to kind of get our feet wet. But then as we continued to grow, and then our volume increased, then we did then we did buy a roaster. Then we had to find a home for it, a temporary home for it, while we waited for South Park to build out. So,
and now your roaster's at the shop.
And now it is at the shop. And then to kind of touch on your story about the, how it kind of takes over the neighborhood. The first time that you kind of cure a roaster, you have to burn the coffee in there. So it really that's a time where you will see almost like black smoke coming out of there. So. The first time we're roasting, we're seasoning the roaster, and the neighbors were coming and say, hey, is this what it's going to be like? I don't know if this is going to work.
Yeah.
But now, to be honest, now it's I would kind of compare it to, it's almost like a bakery. I mean, it's almost like we're baking bread in there. It's actually,
once you get used to the smell, it's really a comforting smell.
It really is.
Your coffee roasting in the morning, but some people that don't. It doesn't smell like coffee brewing.
Right.
And so it's a distinctly different smell, and you have to get used to understanding that means coffee before it starts to be a good smell in your mind.
Instead of like, is there a fire? Is my neighbor's house on fire? Yeah. I live by the grand old barbecue place, so it smells like barbecue roasting all the time. So that's something else. I mean, it does smell like barbecue. It doesn't smell like anything's on fire.
Well, that's why Phil's Barbecue had to move, because
the neighbors,
everybody
right?
thinks, oh, that would be wonderful, unless you ask one of the neighbors that all of their clothes smell like Phil's Barbecue.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So running a food business, going from being in the Navy and then going to law school and then switching over to the food business, which is, quite a different jump. And I know us coming from a food background and now you're in the food business. What is something that was really kind of something unexpected for you, or how did it jive with, how did your expectations jive with reality when you switched over to running a food business?
The timeline was probably the toughest or the transition that we honestly weren't ready for, in terms of we really were open. We were ready to open, I'd say, by March of we had planned, I should say, to open by March of 2018.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of the biggest culture shock in terms of, hey, things just do not move
Which
as
would
quickly.
seem reasonable.
You would,
There's just
San Diego's
no,
crazy environment for building food service.
But on the flip side of that, a lot of my experience in the military really helped me to understand in terms of overall just the health of the mission, in terms of looking at the business in terms of what is sustainable, what do we have to change, what do we have to adjust. Sometimes you have to make some very, very tough decisions in terms of, hey, we at one point, because we did have expectations in terms of, hey, we hope to be operational by this time. Well, you have to have a staff for that ready to go. And then a month goes by, 2 months goes by, and it's like, hey, well, we can't, it's not fair to them to keep them on standby.
Yeah.
But we also have, so we have to make decisions in terms of, hey, how do we make this sustainable? And sometimes, so in terms of just life experience and military experience, that's what has been very complimentary in terms of saying, hey, looking at this in terms of just the overall sustainability of the operation, not so much. And what that means sometimes is sometimes the health of the business you have to put before your own interests. So whenever I see somebody say, hey, I just started a new business and I've already got my own pay set up and all that, so it's like, okay, whoa. You want to put that down,
There are a couple steps ahead. I feel like having a military background really helps with a lot of business, like small businesses. We've had other veteran-based businesses at the farmers market, and they just are really, organization-wise, discipline, very clear in communication, just those kind of things that you learn being in the military. I don't know from experience, but just knowing other people that are, I feel like that really contributes positively to a small business, food business, which can sometimes be crazy and not following a timeline that makes any kind of sense. So I feel like those skills kind of come into play. With your staff, now that you have a brick and mortar and that you're participating in several farmers markets, I know Kat and I we're like, oh, they opened a brick and mortar. Yay. Like from a farmers market manager standpoint, we love the vendors that stay in the market and are consistent in the market, but it's always a concern, and based on experience.
Yeah, it's an exception.
If you have a market on Saturday, but your store is open on Saturday and you have a staffer call out, you're probably not going to close your store for the day, but you might not be at the market. So that's always our concern. So how have you guys been managing that? I know you guys have a great staff, but from a perspective of the vendor and the business owner, how do you handle that?
Well, that was since we from the beginning we always have intended to stay in the market. So that was kind of built into the business plan in terms of when we looked at the location as we did the build out. We also looked at how can this help to support the farmers market, because it actually was easier for us because we did start off as a cottage food. So all of this is being launched from the house every morning. 4:30 it starts. Yeah. Then we're having people come up. Now we did start with all family to begin with, and then we've kind of grown from there. So. It was starting at the house towards now it's at the cafe. We launched from there, and that's been a pretty smooth and welcome transition.
Yeah. So when you have staffing issues, you just have a lot of staff to rely on. Are you guys the backup because you're not at the market every time? So are you like backup if your staffer calls out, or how do you handle those staffing issues?
We here's the staff that we have that has grown with us from the farmers markets. They kind of complement both operations very, very well, because one of the again, the rites of passage of the farmers markets is that there's an element of storytelling that goes into that. So built into the farmers market culture is people stopping by your booths that want to know, so what makes you special? Yeah. So anybody that has been on our team since that, they can tell our story at 3 a.m, blindfolded, backwards, upside down, very, very well, because they're used to people asking those questions. So in terms of staffing, though, we just kind of had that's always been part of the structure. We've always had people identified to hey, this person's specific role is to. We have a market manager now, so that's
that manages the
right.
farmers
So
market
all of the events, because in addition to the farmers markets, we do events as well. So we have a person that just.
So is it a different team? Do you have one team that works at the markets and one team that works in the retail store, or do you?
They cross over, yeah.
Okay,
but as far as like primary duties, yeah, there's one that we have specifically for the farmers markets and events. So.
I think that's smart. I think that's nice just to have like a manager kind of overseeing special events versus like someone who's trying to manage the brick and mortar and the events at the same time. I can see how that's just like a lot of time to juggle.
Yes.
It's a slightly different mind frame.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it takes a little. Yeah, we always say people want to use their restaurant permit to be at the market, and you have to get a different permit to be at the market. I go because it's not a brick and mortar in the street. It's different. There's different elements.
And as we said, culturally they're different as well. So sometimes that crossover is not always somebody that's very used to working in a cafe environment doesn't always typically do well in the farmers market because, like I said, you're just not. I mean, there's an element of stage to that little tent that you're in because people are going to want samples. They're going to want questions answered. They're going to want. They really just are kind of feeling you out in every way. So
there's weather.
Yes.
Different things.
Yes,
so,
and that's one thing that it's amazing to me, like how San Diegans. How the weather actually affects the economy of San Diego.
Yeah.
And that's in both brick and mortar and out in the streets in the farmers markets. It's a couple clouds in the sky can cost us like hundreds of dollars. It's like
yes, we know that all too well. When we interviewed a Seattle farmers market manager, and I was like, "How do you deal with the rain?" And she's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "What is it? How does it affect your thing?" And she's like, "It doesn't affect us. We'll just go out in the rain." Why are you asking me that? I'm like, "Oh, because San Diego closes when it rains." So I was just wondering.
And she said, "Yeah, in Seattle, if we close when it rains, we would have no life.
There would be no economy here." So yeah, San Diego's need to buck it up a little bit, but yeah, it is. That is kind of a difference. But I think I've heard from other business owners as well. It affects brick and mortar also, even though you're going to go inside when you're there. It's just we don't go out.
And it goes both ways with that in terms of if it's raining, if there's a couple of clouds in the sky, it's very slow. If it's too hot, it's
absolutely
it's got to be perfect.
Yeah. And by too hot, we mean
80
degrees.
For you Arizonans listening.
Yes.
We're not actually talking about real heat.
Yeah. Oh man, people are cursing at their podcasters right now.
So coffee is one of the few things that we do. So we usually look for locally produced products. So obviously coffee is not grown in quantity in San Diego. So what we look for with coffee is coffee that's roasted here when people apply as coffee vendors at the markets. So do you ever anticipate there being actual coffee farming in San Diego to the degree, or in California anywhere, to the degree that you could have enough to sell at a market?
It's a work in progress.
They're playing with it.
I know they have some.
Is doing some.
Yeah,
and
with
Scott Murray's doing some. Yeah.
So we just spoke to the city about this because they were curious in terms of if coffee has the same potential that the craft beer industry does in San Diego, if it's something that could draw tourists, things like that. So I know, like I said, Fringe up in Oceanside, they have a couple farms that are going, but they haven't really yielded enough to really support a full operation. And plus, they'll have to work on the cost aspect of it as well.
Right.
Because, I mean, while consumers will, for the novelty of it, pay a little extra for it, but then, you do reach a tipping point.
Past a certain point, yeah. Right. But you've got a really good network of farmers set up in Southeast Asia that you work with so
that's
closely.
really what we're known for in terms of, again, going back to the relationships that we do have with them. And then within the specialty coffee industry, I mean, even someone like Chuck over at Bird Rock, it gives him pause and say, wow, you have specialty coffee from Southeast Asia. That's not something I've ever seen before, because a place like Vietnam is really known for the quantity of coffee they produce. They're the second largest producer in the world.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but they're not known for their quality of coffee.
Gotcha.
So that's where they're really, so those relationships that we have developed with those farmers is quite unique and within the specialty coffee industry, just to see those the quality of coffee that they're producing now.
So are you able to give them guidance on how they need to change growing techniques to change the quality of coffee to make it more saleable? Or?
Yes, and we've worked with some nonprofits over there as well to kind of show them, hey, listen, as your practices are more sustainable both to the environment and the quality increases, you're going to see your profits start to increase. You start charging more for those beans. So yeah, that's definitely something that we've been very engaged with it and watch those relationships kind of come to fruition.
Right.
In terms,
So what's next for Seven Seas? Are you going to do more retail outlets? Are you going to do more markets? Are you going to just coast on this empire that you've developed?
Yeah, you know,
and giving it all up and go back to law school?
No, this is something where the staff always kind of nervously kind of laughs when we said this, because we said when we opened in South Park, one of the crew said, "Hey, so are we just going to kind of lay back and take it easy now?" And somebody said, "Oh, you must not know Eric." I mean, this is so since we opened, we actually. In December, there was a friend that I know through coffee that had a shop up in Aliso Viejo up in Orange County, and she asked, "Would you be interested in taking it over?" And at the time, I said, "No, absolutely not." So, but since then, sometimes when opportunity knocks, you just have to open the door. So, they had reached out to us. They made us an offer that we honestly just could not refuse. So,
good location.
Excellent location. So we just opened up in Aliso Viejo about 3 weeks ago. So that's our second location.
Nice.
Yeah. So.
Are you doing markets in Orange County?
No, not yet. No, okay, yeah. We will hold that one close. Yeah, but we do, like, for example, this weekend we're doing an event on Catalina Island. So we do get. I mean, our range is quite wide as far as the events that we can do. But that's. So we'll see. I mean, it all depends on kind of how because you just have to be flexible. I mean, as this has grown, I mean, we've definitely have leaned on some areas as we've continued to grow. So, for example, like I said, the farmers market definitely helps sustain that. I want to make those a little more autonomous in terms of how they're self-sufficient. Same thing with the cafes now, and just growing those. And so eventually, I mean, I don't know that we'll look for anything quite like Joe's on the nose per se, but definitely something maybe that we can bring an espresso machine in and kind of add some variety to the menu in the markets. Yeah.
Yeah, the markets would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're growing intentionally. Thinking about it. I think it's easy sometimes if you're getting on a roll and a business is successful, they're like, we're going to open here and here and here and just taking everything at once.
Yeah, and that's a lot of times people ask, are you guys looking to franchise? Are you guys looking, have you thought about Florida, things like that? And the answer is really no. I mean, we do try to take it one step at a time because we don't want to spread ourselves too thin, financially or physically. And so no, as of right now, we'll see what the future holds, but we're definitely always open for opportunity as we go forward.
Yeah, it has been smooth, like on like our end, like my end as market manager, watching your business as you opened a brick and mortar. We're always kind of like, what's going to happen with this vendor? And from our end, it's been very smooth. Like I feel like your staff really shows up, you guys have your full setup. Like sometimes, people pull stuff into their shop, so then their booth looks really lame and it starts emptying out slowly.
And everybody always says, "Oh yeah, I'm totally going to stay in the markets." It's like when if I win the lottery, I'm totally keeping my job.
Yeah,
they open their shop, they're like,
But then sometimes that
which is how the coffee space opened up at Little Italy because Bump's shop just consumed them after a while.
Yeah, and they ended up just transferring straight to that. But it's just been
it's nice to see you guys be able to do both.
Oh yeah, and
we have a few vendors that have done that are able to handle both, but not everybody can.
But if I were to do it single-handedly, absolutely not. That's where I have to recognize at times, hey, I've got to delegate this to other people because it takes a while to get people trained up to what your expectation is, things like that. But that's really how we've kind of managed that in terms of saying, hey, that's why we have a market manager, because I simply cannot be everywhere all the time. Because in addition to the markets, we have the cafes. In addition to the cafes, we have online. So there's always a million things going on. So. But yeah, the markets, if anything, you'll start to see us kind of evolve and kind of really fine tune now. Because now we have the luxury of stepping back and say, okay, how can we do it better?
Yeah.
Because we've done it at a very a much smaller capacity at some of the other markets, where then we definitely leveled up when we jumped into Little Italy, and then now the volume just goes way, way up. And that's where I'm looking at, hey, how can we actually... That's when we started brewing the coffee on site there. So brought a generator and really started to have more production on site. So we'll see. Like I said, that's you'll see that'll always be a work in progress, and we're always looking at
and a grinder.
We did really, and that actually we did bring that in for a little while, and you'll probably see that one come back because that one is unbelievable in terms of just the aroma that it.
It puts out the aroma.
It's amazing.
Some people don't have a coffee grinder, and especially at a market like Little Italy, where the other thing that could do well for you there, I would think, is smaller packages that are ground, because we've got a lot of people there that are shopping, whether it's from downtown or uptown or different parts of San Diego. But there is also a significant amount of tourists on that street, so they're in hotels. They're not necessarily going to buy a pound of coffee. But,
right.
Yeah, just kind of sounds like you guys are good at taking that kind of feedback and doing little tweaks to your business model.
100%, and that's advice I give to people sometimes. Whereas you have to, know which advice to listen to and which advice to say, okay, I noted, and we'll
Somebody should do that, not us.
Yeah, because you do get a tremendous amount of feedback.
Yeah.
And that's like, for example, in the San Diego Magazine article where it talked about we were really focused on the light side of coffee. Yeah. Well, the market's really opened our eyes to where we can't be necessarily making the coffee that I enjoy per se. I mean, I definitely we're putting our name on all the coffee, so the quality has to be there, but it's not necessarily making the coffee that I want to drink. It's really, that's where the markets. I realize that, hey, for as much as I'm excited about light roasted coffee, the rest of the market isn't there yet. So if we want to be able to pay the bills, maybe we should be a little flexible.
Because I think specialty coffee has trained people to drink the coffee.
Yes, but that's only about 2% of the market. So
right. Yeah, no.
So
I would think you'd have a huge market with converting tea drinkers.
Yes, and that really is. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, I mean, that's where you get those delicate floral notes. But that's definitely, I mean, in terms of like cause and effect feedback that we receive from those markets, are those light, are those medium and darker roasts drifting away from those lighter roasts that we were. That's exclusively all we had, because we had this very unique coffee that we thought, hey, this is something that sets us apart, unique value that we're offering to San Diego. But it was so unique that the customers didn't even really know how to respond to it. So that's where we said, okay, we're going to meet you halfway. We'll bring in some other really, really good medium and darker roasts as well.
Yeah. That is what I think is a huge benefit of farmers markets is, I mean, you can pay thousands of dollars to engage a focus group. You just show up at a farmers market and set up your tent, and you've got thousands of people in a focus group. You're talking to your end user. They're generally very willing to share what they like and don't like about your product.
Yes, no, it's very, very true. Yes.
Yeah, if you're willing to listen and to take feedback, I think that's important.
Yeah. It really is.
Really beneficial.
Yeah.
So as usual, we aimed for a 25-minute conversation and had so much fun. We're at 45, so
wow. Yes.
This happens.
This happens with good guests. It's good. I feel like this is really beneficial to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Bridget, do you have a
So I think our question of the week, we're trying to figure out what kind of question to do. So I think we'll say, if we had to open a retail shop or a different kind of shop, not something you own already, not a farmer's market, what kind of shop would you open? Speaking of opening shops, not a food business in San Diego. Pretend we're not in San Diego. Pretend the permits would go through.
Anything's possible.
In a timely manner. So what would you do?
So I've been in the restaurant business. I actually had a coffee house for many years. My kids grew up grinding coffee and squeezing orange juice, big biceps on one side. So every once in a while I'm tempted to get back into that. Somebody slaps me and says, no, don't do time. Don't do that again. I would probably love to have a bookstore. I don't know that that's necessarily a profitable business nowadays in the Amazon age, but they're coming back. Verbatim, actually, here in North Park is a used bookstore. They just took a space twice the size that they're in that's next door to them and are adding, so they'll be 3 times the size that they were. So that's very encouraging to me that bookstores are growing. So I think I'd give it a shot in a bookstore.
Oh, I think that's nice.
Yeah.
What about you, Eric? What would you open if it wasn't a coffee shop? What other kind of retail store would?
And we dabble with this a little bit, but it's just kind of a complement to everything else we have going on. But I'd probably look at a clothing line. A lot of because originally one of my first passions was graphic design.
Yeah.
So that's where you kind of see that shine through a little bit in 7 Cs. But I think that's I'd give that.
You guys do have really great gear, like
shirts
and your design
cups
and your logo and the cups and everything. That does really stand out.
Did you do your logo?
Yeah. So that's it's been hands-on. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh yeah. On that note, where did that name come from? 7 Cs.
Oh no. Thanks for asking. That's okay. So a portion of it is kind of a nod to my past career in the Navy. So just being out there, but also the fact that we source the coffees from all across the world. So we're actually going across the 7 Seas to bring the coffee back to San Diego.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
How about you, Bridget? What kind of little shop would you have?
Okay, well, now that you said that, I always, if I were younger than I am now. So, Kat's my mom. So my family had a restaurant when we were younger, and I feel like this neighborhood needs a restaurant like that. It was open early, had really good coffee, fresh squeezed juice and lemonades, and then we had bagels, like the best bagels and pastries, and sandwiches, really good sandwiches. We all cut our finger on the slicer when we were kids.
Right.
Like slice the deli meat, like high pace, and we sold a bunch of newspapers. It was called the News Cafe, so we had newspapers there, so people would come like hang out there, but it wasn't a place where you would just like get 1 cup of coffee and sit there for 6 hours, because
I don't know
how people make money doing that. So it was like they made cards and other things, and I think that would be the kind of shop that I'd want to do.
Go back and do it again.
Yeah. Although I know you're still.
That's good.
My sister's gonna call me and slap me over the phone and say, no, we said we're not going to do that. But I like that kind of, I like a restaurant, like I like that kind of food service meal. Like I was a server for a long time and managed a restaurant after my family's restaurant, and it's just, that's where I feel really comfortable. And
that's kind of why I got back into, I was in publishing after that and marketing and things, and that's kind of why I got back into the farmers market, is because I missed that experience of seeing the same customer at the restaurant. It was every day, and when I got back into farmers markets, it was just one day a week at that time. But that's one of the things I think I was missing and looking for, was that experience of having a community around your business where you would see the same people over and over, and you knew what they liked. You knew how they liked their coffee, or you knew what farmer they were looking for in the farmers market case.
That's what I try to train the staff at the market and say, hey, like, yeah, we got to set up the market and we got to deal with towing cars and all that stuff. That's great. But like, also, there are regular shoppers here. Like, that makes me most excited when I see them there, and it's like, oh my gosh, hey, how's it going? And I get to watch their kids grow up, or like they bring their sister who's in town to the market and they introduce her to me. Like, that's where I feel like that connection is so great as a market manager, and then I see vendors make those connections too. It just feels like a restaurant to me. It feels like that kind of like homey feeling where you have this community, and it's just been so great. At the Mercado
thing. Everybody knows your name.
I mean, the Mercado's been open for 11 years, so it's like when I started working there 8 or 9 years ago, there was some of our customers had just had babies, and now those kids are in like elementary school and middle school, so it's just great to see them grow up like that. And
it is very rewarding, those relationships that you do make with those customers, because even in Little Italy, when we first started, we were all the way at the end of the market, so I knew that any of the customers that were coming to us, they literally would have to walk past 2 other coffee vendors.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was very intentional by the time they reached us to get their cup of coffee. So it was. Yeah.
You get that loyal
Yeah. It was
following,
like, wow,
and
people do really notice. Yeah.
They recognize you. Yeah,
they do,
it feels good to be recognized like that. So.
It's great.
All right.
Thank you so much for being with us
Hey,
today.
thank you so much for having me. Yes. Thank you so much.
And thanks for being at the markets every week, and we're really excited that you've now sworn in front of our national audience that you're going to be staying at the markets, even though you got the shop open. So that's great.
Definitely will.
Good. We'll see you at the market.
All right. Thanks, Kat. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Let us know what's happening in your world. Are you just opening your market for the season? Are you deciding to delay your opening? Will you be doing online ordering or drive-up markets instead? To hear what's happening in various parts of the country or share what's happening in your area, we have terrific conversations and people sharing resources over in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. Feel free to come on over, answer the 3 qualifying questions, and join that group. You can also message us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros, or email us at connect@farmersmarketpros.com. Thanks so much for listening to Tent Talk. Please leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you access your podcasts, and tell us how you're enjoying Tent Talk. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss the next episode. This podcast is produced by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Justine Marzoni Mead. Original music by David Mead. Thanks for listening.